So welcome. This is Dr. James Dickey with Clarissa Barlow West. So the way this conversation got started is I posted a video about the importance of supplementing with vitamin D, and Clarissa saw that and started asking me questions, and I said, okay, these are wonderful questions. Why don't we just do a video conference so that other people can benefit from your questions, because these questions are things that I get frequently. So that's how we're getting started. And it's my intention at this point just to really let Clarissa ask and me just answer, and we'll see what we come up with.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. And really what an honor to be able to talk with you and hear a little bit about your background and where you're moving into now. What you posted the other day truly fascinated me when you talked about vitamin D being a hormone and how it was mislabeled, and that it's a vitamin. People think it's a vitamin versus a hormone. That intrigued me, and then following my thought process and moving into all the different things, and it kind of trailed off, and I was at a completely different space than what vitamin D is. So to start out, that I think that is where we get to start, is how is it a hormone? Like expand upon that further. Like vitamin D is a hormone, not a vitamin.
Yeah, so vitamins are nutrients. How they're defined, I guess you can define either way, but vitamins are nutrients that we generally get from your diet. Vitamin D, so-called vitamin D, cholecalciferol or ergocalciferol, there's various different calciferols, and vitamin D3 is the one that our body functions best with. But it's a four-ring structure that's synthesized directly from cholesterol. Cholesterol is the parent hormone, the parent compound of all your sex steroids. And so when sunlight hits your skin, it causes an enzymatic reaction that I can't tell you the biochemistry perfectly without looking it up, but that makes a small adjustment to the cholesterol molecule, which is a four-ring structure, and changes it into vitamin D. And then vitamin D can be converted into pregnenolone, which then can be converted into, and is converted into, various, estrogen, progesterone, the various androgenic hormones like testosterone and epitestosterone and dihydrotestosterone and the various estrogens. Anyway, all those sex steroids all start with cholesterol. With cholesterol in your skin that gets then converted to vitamin D in your skin that then gets branched into those. And there's other pathways too, but a lot of people look at vitamin D as an important precursor. And, we look at vitamin D supplementation as something that's just to prevent major deficiency. But, I talked about that in the post, that the 400 units a day that's supposedly, prevent severe, vitamin D deficiency is not nearly enough to thrive. And I don't know, I'll let you ask some more questions, but I can go forever.
Yeah. Well, that's what fascinated me, was when you compared it, or you put in the correlation of it being part of the sex hormones, that as we go through the change of life for women, but even up until that point too, for men too, it's been said that women cycle every 28 days, but men cycle every 28 hours, right? And that's what fascinated me. I mentioned in that post that my intuition takes me far, but to know the intellect behind it and the knowledge of why it is that I choose what I choose. I've never taken vitamin D supplements, and I'm curious in how it is also, if it's directly connected to the sex hormones, men and women, then how is that interfering or affecting or helping or harming sexual function in relationships? Since we coach really couples in relationships, I'm curious about that.
There's other pathways that your body can synthesize your sex steroids without having to have a vitamin D starter point. There's multiple pathways, but just like how do you create wealth? You have multiple sources of income, and so you want them all functioning as well as possible. So how does vitamin D deficiency affect hormones? Probably way more than we realize, because no one's really done the digging to figure it out. Whenever I would recommend a man with less than optimal testosterone, which is a whole nother amazing subject matter, and women too. But anyway, people ask me, how can I get my testosterone up, so-called naturally, without, taking shots or creams or something else? And I say, well, number one, it's very difficult to get it to an optimal level without doing that once you're past the age of 30. But to answer your question, there are multiple things you need to take that are precursors to help your body do that. And one of them is high dose vitamin D, which is probably at least 10,000 units a day if you want to optimize your body's ability to synthesize its own testosterone. As far as how it affects, hormonal, moods and all that, I don't think that's been really well determined. But one thing we know for sure is that vitamin D has a huge immune effects. And so I might have shared this the other day. If not, I'll share it now. Many years ago, probably at least 15 years ago, there was a study that looked at a meta-analysis that looked at the difference between skin cancer rates and colon cancer rates. And the premise of this study was, okay, in the early 1970s or mid 70s, whatever, dermatologists started getting really aggressive about recommending sunscreen and minimizing sun exposure because of skin cancer. And this meta-analysis determined that on a population statistical basis, for every skin cancer prevented by our population decreasing sun exposure and using sunscreen, for every single skin cancer prevented, 5 colon cancers occurred because of the decreased influence of the amazing immune preventive effects of vitamin D. And I thought, well, that is a huge loss, because colon cancer is way more lethal than skin cancer on average. And plus, you're getting 5 times as many cancers. So that's one really clear correlation we found. As far as how it affects, menopause or other hormonal things, it's not real clear, but it's I think we'll figure that out over time.
So you touched on a point that triggers probably a lot of people, and about the whole skin or sunblock. And if that is directly affecting the way that people, the way we eliminate, like if your colon's plugged up, that's everything starts in the colon is something that I've heard. Then wouldn't it be safe to say that it's more of all of the chemical laden crap in all of the sunscreen that's creating all of the harm and stuff in our body? Whereas if we were more in the sun in a safe way, you're using something that doesn't have all the chemicals in it, that's blocking the nutrients that we gain from the sun. Because let's see, what was it growing up? I always heard 20 minutes in the sun a day. But you're saying that that's not enough.
Yeah, I'll have to look back at the study, but I think you got to get a full body sun exposure for at least 2 hours, and you got to be south of Oklahoma City in order to get enough vitamin D to thrive. And I should have looked that up before this interview, but if that's not exact, that's very close. And the trouble is, most of us don't live north of Oklahoma City, and it doesn't matter. And a lot of us don't. And even those that do, who gets 2 hours every day of full body exposure? So everybody's deficient, unless you're like I said, unless you're renting jet skis in Cancun, run around your bikini 8 hours a day, you're not getting enough through sun exposure. And then especially when you put people of darker skins, African or Indian, or people with dark skin, this is absolutely fascinating from an evolutionary perspective, is that if you look, the most pale skin original people, Scandinavians, where are they? Way north. And the more people live by the equator, the more they have lived there for millennia. That's darker skin. Well, so how that correlates to vitamin D? If someone of African origins lives in Canada, he gets no vitamin D because his skin is very resistant to sun effects. So it's got to be all dietary in that case.
That leads to, like, this conversation could go so many directions.
It's just fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's truly fascinating. And I'm thinking about all the different times I tell my kids to actually take your shirt off when they're outside. Like, go out, and we don't use sunscreen. Actually, we don't. We haven't for a really long time, and that's just what we choose to do. We choose to go a different route. My next question is, how is it affecting, like, adrenal fatigue? Is there any correlation between vitamin D, because you say it's an immune builder, and that's what we all know it as, is vitamin D, it helps the immune system. How is it affected with adrenal fatigue?
That's an awesome question, and I'm going to talk from a theoretical perspective, and I don't have any hard facts to prove this, but I do have, I think information that makes a lot of sense. Adrenal fatigue. Your adrenal gland is like your afterburner. So testosterone is a hormone that's easy to talk about because it's pretty simple about how it works and what it does. But this could relate to thyroid hormones, could relate to insulin, could relate to, any of 20 other hormones could be considered in the same way. But just say take testosterone or thyroid hormone, for example. Let's use thyroid. That's less controversial. So if your thyroid is less than optimal, what can your body do about it? Your body's got to get up and go to work in the morning. Your body's got to go, get in the car and pick up the kids after school, whatever. And you feel you just don't have the energy to do it. And your thyroid, for various reasons, is not producing enough thyroid hormone to energize you. So what's your body do? Its go-to is, let's get some cortisol, let's get some adrenaline. So the adrenals, faithful adrenals, old faithful, they squirt out some cortisol, they squirt out some adrenaline, and you do it. So they make up for your weak thyroid. You want to have sex with your wife and you don't have enough testosterone to motivate you. In your brain, you say, let's go. Finally, your body said, okay, fine. Here's some adrenaline. Here's some cortisol. We're going to energize you. Go do what you want to do. Over and over and over, your adrenal is your afterburner. So, in a fighter jet, if a guy's in a dogfight and he needs to get out of trouble, he can light up his afterburner for, I forget, like 5 seconds is all they can stand, or else you burn your tail off. But for those 5 seconds, you increase your speed by 20, 30% and you get out of trouble. The trouble is we're now trying to live on afterburner, not for 5 seconds at a time, but for 5 days at a time. And no wonder adrenal fatigue is rampant because we're not doing things nutritionally. I mean, what's it take to have awesome internal function? You got to get enough sleep. You got to get enough water. You got to detox every day. And I'm not talking about doing a watermelon fast every day or whatever. I'm just saying you've got to have a healthy system that can, because we live on a toxic planet. Another funny thing, my people always say, well, I eat organic foods and I don't smoke. And I'm thinking, this is funny. Remember back before smoking was, eliminated from restaurants. I remember being a kid and my dad, didn't smoke. And I remember him joking, saying, no smoking, you'd go to the restaurant and the maitre d' say, you want smoking or non-smoking? And he'd say non-smoking. And then he'd joke with us kids, say, well, the no smoking section of a restaurant is like the no peeing section of the pool. There's really no such thing. And so you got to be able to detox every day. You got to have enough quality water. And I can talk about alkaline water and micro water. And that's not really what we're on here, but all these things. So when you're not getting enough sleep, you're not appropriately dealing with emotions and feelings, and you're stressed. Your nutrition is not awesome. You're not detoxing appropriately. Then your multiple systems in your body start to fail. You're not producing enough thyroid hormone. You're not producing enough testosterone. Maybe you're making too much insulin. And the go-to thing is your adrenal gland. Your adrenal gland is the old faithful that is going to make it work until it doesn't. And that's why we all have adrenal fatigue.
I feel like everybody has adrenal fatigue right now.
Yeah.
So vitamin D is going to assist in bringing your adrenals back up. That's
one of multiple factors that, if that's working well, that's one less hole that your adrenals have got to plug. And it may be a bit of a stretch, but yeah, that's true. And vitamin D. Okay, so here's a remedy to lick a cold or a flu. If you take massive dose of vitamin D, like I'm talking 50,000 units, maybe even 2 or 3 times a day for 3 days, when you get the first hint of a cold, 9% of the time it'll go away in the first day. It has such huge immune effects. People talk about vitamin C and zinc and echinacea. All those things are helpful, but D is way more powerful at immediately modulating immune function. And the other thing I alluded to earlier was cancer. Oh gosh, that's a whole other subject. But cancer we all get cancer every day. Mm-hmm. I mean, you get mutations in your body every single day that are cancerous, but we don't call it cancer because your immune system figures it out when it's tiny, gets rid of it, and it doesn't turn into a real tumor. When you get a real tumor, that means your immune system's been asleep for the last 6 months or something. Mm. And again, vitamin D is one of those things that for pennies a day you can supplement. And there's no statistics to prove this, but I would say with confidence, if you have enough vitamin D, you'll cut your cancer risk of all forms of cancer at least in half, if not a lot better than that.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. And sun, I think we don't know this, but I think getting sun exposure is the best way to get vitamin D. There's things about a natural way to get it that we don't really probably understand yet. And I certainly get sun exposure whenever I can. I I wear sunscreen on my face. That's it. I want the rest of my body to be making vitamin D for me. And here's another fact that you didn't ask about, but I think you'll be interested in. Skin cancer is, well, here's a statistic. The business executive who gets burned in the Bahamas twice a year has a higher cancer risk than the construction worker who's got leathery tan skin from being in the sun all day, every day.
Yeah.
It's the burn, not the tan. Now, the tan definitely produces aged skin over time, but as far as cancer risk, it's the burn.
That would, you're confirming everything that I've always thought, everything that I'll teach, that my own kids or the people in my space, that I don't have evidence to back it up. I just say, just ask yourself, see if it's true for you.
And the other thing that's fascinating, that's even more exciting, is before the age of 12 or 18 months, your risk is probably the sunburns that happen before 18 months of age that produce 90% of skin cancers. It's the
Did
sun.
you say 18 months or 18 years?
18 months.
Oh, okay.
Now, certainly the older you get, 16 or 18 years is even better, but probably it's exponential. So something like 90% of the risk of skin cancer happens before 18 months, and probably 99% of skin cancer happens before the age of 18 years, even though it doesn't develop till you're 50.
Wow. Really?
So you can eliminate probably 90% of skin cancers by not having a sunburn or minimal sun. This is hard to take, but minimizing, very brief sun exposures, especially to really white babies.
Yeah.
Before 18 months. A sunburn in a 6-month-old is, to me, that's almost criminal.
Wow, I've never heard this. That's crazy. This is amazing. I think every parent gets to know this. Really, maybe you get to get this out there for that reason there itself.
Yeah.
So going back to the immune system and how you said if you took high doses, super high doses, as soon as you felt the oncoming of a flu or cold or something,
Mm-hmm.
then you knock it out within a day, 24 hours.
Yeah.
This is even fascinating to me. So a little bit that you don't know about me. 12 years ago, my son choked on a vitamin, and he's not with us anymore. That vitamin was a vitamin A and D. And it was because he was getting sick, like it was just a little cough, a little capsule that he'd had swallowed many times. But back then I knew the effects that vitamin D had in knocking that out. So it just brings me back to, it feels like it's a 360 for me of going back into, because then I kind of went away from vitamins, like, okay, how do we get all of our nutrition through the foods and everything that we eat? I was always supplementing, but now going back, it just feels like a 360. Meeting you and just seeing you on that thread about vitamin D, it blew my mind, as far as all of the things that you were talking about. So that brings me to the question of, when we take a supplement, when we take vitamin D, is it best if we take it with something else so that we can better absorb it? And how is it that we know if it's a good quality? How is it that we can judge for ourselves which is the right one to buy for us? Not going off of just purely price, but going off of quality. Yeah. And so I'll let you go from there.
Those are all really good and really difficult questions. The standard, medical response would be, I don't know if I identified, I guess I told everybody I was a doctor. I'm a medical doctor. Let me back up and give you my quick bio. I finished med school at KU Med in 95, did a residency and finished my family medicine residency in 98, did that in the Michigan State program, and then practiced comprehensive family medicine for about 14 years. Did womb to the tomb care, delivered babies, and did hospital care and even nursing home care, et cetera, hospital or office-based procedures, et cetera. Then I switched in for the last about 6 years. I've done full-time emergency medicine, and during that time, I've also been really passionate about learning all about anti-aging and health and thriving, and that's largely because of a huge transformation that I was privileged to experience through a doctor that taught me some stuff, 6 or 7 years ago. But back to so I'm just saying this is, I'm just saying I'm not just talking off the top of my head. I'm talking off of a huge fund of knowledge over 2 decades, and especially the last 6 years, really focusing on health, thriving, and so-called anti-aging. And it's not that I'm against aging; it's that I want to age well. I don't need to live to be 150, but I still want to be going 90 miles an hour when I'm 90 years old. I mean, there's no rocking chair for this guy. So, you know, I don't want to taper at the end of my life. I want a cliff. And that's what I am passionate about creating for myself and my clientele. Anyway, your question was, how do you know what vitamin D to take? So, and what foods to eat it with? So it would make the most sense that you would have fats, healthy fats, when you consume vitamin D to maximize absorption.
Oh, okay.
So, olive oil would be a free, an easy thing to say, but healthy fats would be probably maximize absorption because your body's already in the mindset of we got to digest fat. It's going to secrete the pancreatic enzymes that help to absorb and digest and break down fat and absorb it correctly. And vitamin D is a fat soluble, hormone, vitamin, whatever you want to call it. It's also the same structure as cholesterol. So if you eat it with animal products, it's going to absorb really well too.
Taking vitamin D with animal products. So just take your vitamins with your dinner.
Yeah.
When you're having your steak or.
Yeah, it's going to absorb very well. And it probably is going to, and the other thing about absorption, you're right. People say you are what you eat. And I say, well, no, you are what you absorb and assimilate. And if you're not careful, you become what you do not eliminate.
Oh, you get to run with that one.
Yeah. That's a quote from a naturopathic doc, Lindsay Duncan. I love that he says that. He said, if you're not careful, you become what you do not eliminate. That's really good. It's a good perspective. But so, what brand and all that, vitamin D3, there's D1 and D2, there's various different glycerols that you can get, and your body has to do some work to convert the other forms of vitamin D into D3, which is what it can use. So ideally just take D3.
So we can only absorb the D3? You can
absorb any of the vitamin Ds, any of the calciferols, but you can only utilize, it's only D3 that your body, really uses. So your body has to convert the other forms into D3 before it becomes useful for the various things we're talking about. Another example is, I'll just touch on this and we can talk about it some other time maybe, but how many people that have thyroid dysfunction take Synthroid or levothyroxine? Same concept. The levothyroxine is T4, which is maybe 10% active as a thyroid hormone. Your body has to convert it to T3 before it can be, 100% active as a thyroid hormone. And some people do that conversion beautifully, and a lot of people don't. So why are we supplementing with T4 when T3 is what we really need? Same thing with vitamin D3. If you're awesome and everything's working great, then fine, take D1 or D2, and those are all fine. But ideally, get it from the sun. And secondly, take D3 directly. And as far as what brand, I can certainly recommend several, different things that have worked. I don't know of any D3 brand that's not effective. I'm sure some supplements are junk that people are just selling for selling purposes. But if it's a company that's been in business for a few years, I think if it's not a startup, if it's got a good reputation, I think you're probably safe. Probably the bigger issue is not whether the D3 is going to absorb or work. It's probably the bigger issue is how clean is it? What other junk they got in there?
Yeah. What else? What are they filling it with?
Yeah.
Well, shoot, James, everything that you said just brings up more questions, and I know that we want to keep this at effective time that keep people engaged. And like you just touched upon the T3 and the T4, and then that gets me into like the fitness of the guys, and they're taking these different things, like if they're, and it's just so many other questions when it comes into, okay, somebody's doing bodybuilding and somebody's doing this and they're taking this, like what is it, like it's so many other questions.
So this is a fun format. So if you're up for it, I think I'd love to do another one or even a series, because it's a very fun way for me to communicate. And
yeah, this is cool. This is fun and super informative. And I think anyone that gets in your space and that chooses to be one of your clients, you're going to be able to rock their world in a real positive way. A positive way that is going to set them down a path of multidimensional health. That it's not just this one path that you go here and then this is it. It's just what else is possible for them to discover and create the optimal performance in every area. Like I just feel like when we are creating a very powerful immune system, and when we're creating a healthy gut, then that's creating more of what's the happy feeling. What is that called? Is it serotonin? No.
Well, serotonin or dopamine or oxytocin, these are all happy hormones.
So yeah, so I was just like, when we can create all of if vitamin D truly is a hormone, my mind is going crazy with, if we have this powerful immune system and then we can go and produce in a happier way and be happier in life and all that we're doing, then it's going to not only improve your health, it's also going to improve relationships. It's going to improve sex life, because just that in itself, if we're eliminating properly, then we're performing better in every area. And then as far as fitness and nutrition, like, this is fascinating. And I think that the spectrum is huge with just this one topic of vitamin D. And I'm passionate about women balancing their hormones and stuff like that. So but I'm also kind of sick of everything being tossed upon, like, oh, your hormones are off. Oh, your hormones are off. And like how you talked even about adrenals, that like our adrenal glands being the afterburner, and that so many of us are operating on that afterburner all the time, that it's no wonder that we crash so damn hard. Like, we crash hard and we hit hard, and it's like, okay, well, what do we get to do now? But those of us that are just those go-getters and those movers and those pushers, that we just keep going. And sometimes I don't even know how I operate sometimes, because I know that I've got massive adrenal fatigue going on. And by the time 2 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon hits, if I don't have that 20-minute nap before I can go create the rest of my afternoon with the kids when they get off school, then like, game over. So I feel like you like just so much to offer. Whoever gets in your space, I'm happy to share this and do whatever it is I can to support you in that. Incredible, absolutely incredible. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I appreciate the honors. I really appreciate it. It's a huge pleasure and joy for me to share, and be delighted to interact this way additionally if you want to.
Okay, cool.